It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
This segment of the Financial Crisis Talk Center, the word of the day is offers, and in this segment we're talking about offers in compromise in terms of compromising a debt to the IRS. We've talked about this subject many times on the show. Jenny Lingle is with us in the studio, who is our manager of our tax practice, tax collection defense at Thav Gross. She's going to walk us through it. I got David Einstein with me, Brian Smalls with me. But we're going to do a little bit different than we've done in the past, because every time we have a tax issue, I always bring Jenny in, and then it always ends up being half of the segment, and then we're crunched on time, and we talk about the issues, but we don't thoroughly lay them out. Well, the other day it came to me and said, let's just do one thing this segment. I want to walk through an offer in compromise, no other tax issues at all, so that if you've heard out there in the media, how do I go about getting this OIC, this offer in compromise with the IRS? If you listen and watch this show, you should get a much better idea of how it's done and when it will work and when it won't.
And when did this actually come to you, and by what method? Was it an angel? Was it? I mean, what exactly happened?
I was in the office thinking about the show yesterday and thinking we were filming it. I knew I had Jenny coming in because she had mentioned, are we filming today? And I said, yeah. So she says, I got to put makeup on. I couldn't resist that.
Thanks, Ken.
And then I said, let's do offers in compromise.
Right
That's
after I told you, I think you should do offers in compromise. When you walked out of my office.
Maybe it was Brian.
Oh, it was Brian.
It just happened to be me that came up with the idea.
But one thing I do
But we'll
want
put
to
the
do
blame on Jenny
is I wanna
because she's
do
got to get
offers
the
in
answers right
compromise.
today.
I don't want to do a show about how we came up with offers in compromise.
Well, then let's dig in.
So let's get to it. First of all, so we're going to do it as a case study. The basic rule on an offer in compromise, what is an offer in compromise, Jenny?
It's when you can settle your tax debt for less than the full amount that you owe.
Okay, and I understand there's two types. There's a lump sum and a periodic. What's
Right.
the difference?
The lump sum payment, when you submit your offer, you submit 20% of the amount you're offering, and if it's accepted, you have to make that payment within 5 months of acceptance.
If
Okay.
it's not accepted, do you get your money back?
No, you do not.
Okay, and what's a periodic payment?
Periodic payment
offer.
It allows you 24 months to make the full offer payment. However, your offer ends up being significantly higher.
All right, so you're paying more for the right to go 24
And
months.
Jenny, is it just income taxes, or could it be other types of taxes?
Any type of taxes that you
So
owe with the Internal Revenue
941
Service.
payroll taxes,
Payroll taxes,
income taxes,
self-employment taxes,
just whatever you owe to the IRS.
That's correct.
Including any
cigarette
penalties,
taxes, fuel
any
taxes,
interest?
I'm sorry, I did.
cigarette taxes, fuel taxes,
Yes.
I suppose.
Excise taxes.
Excise taxes, whatever kind of taxes you have. Okay, here's our case study, because I want to get right to it. David and Kelly, they live in Oakland County. They have 2 children. We forgot to name the children's. Rick and Fred. 2 contemporary names.
A boy
in
and a
modern
girl?
society.
Ricky
No.
could be a girl.
No. IRS, they owe them $100,000 in back taxes. David is an engineer, a good job, making $75,000 a year. Kelly is a teacher. She's making $50,000 a year. After tax income, they're making $7,825 per month. So this isn't a situation where they're destitute. They've got good income. They're living in Oakland County. But they have a big tax problem. How will it work in an offer in compromise? First thing we have to do is we're going to evaluate their assets. All right, so they have a 401k. Now, we've talked about offers in compromise on the show before, and we've said if you've got money in a 401k or an IRA, that's usually counted as an asset, which is not a good thing when you do your offer in compromise. We've had that discussion, correct?
Yeah.
And we've also talked about the fact that if IRS is trying to collect from you, they have the ability to get to those assets. Okay? But here's the rule. What's the rule, Jenny, with a 401k in a offer and compromise?
In an offer and compromise with a 401k, they look to it, and the first thing they look to is not just a 401k. It could also be a 403b plan
Or an IRA?
An IRA. There's a few out there, and I found them with different government employees and sometimes teachers, wherein they actually have to retire or quit before they can borrow or withdraw, have any access to the funds.
And if that's the case, what's the result?
Then for an offer and compromise purpose, the value of that asset is zero because they're not going to force you to quit or retire to take the money.
So everyone knows where we're going. If the value is zero, this is a good thing, like in the movie Dave. If the value is higher, that whatever that amount is, your offer is going to have to include that amount plus what else we have to provide for. Now, if they can access the fund, if they can withdraw it as a loan or they can take an early distribution, then what's the rule?
Okay, so for David, we had him having a $10,000 in a 401k plan. The IRS is going to multiply that by 70% and say $7,000 is the amount that asset is going to be valued at for offer and compromise purposes.
So essentially what they're doing is they're giving a 30% leeway because David would have to take that money and pay taxes on it if he actually took that money out. So the rule is 70% of your IRA's 401ks, unless under the terms of the plan, you cannot withdraw or borrow the money. Now, if you're self-employed and you own your own business with employees and you have a 401k plan, there's a little planning thing here. If you amended that plan so that no one could borrow or take any early distributions, and then at the point you were applying for an offer and compromise, you might be in a position where you could exclude that debt. Something to think about. A lot of self-employed people who own their own companies are the ones that have the tax problems, and they have 401ks. Just a little thing to throw out there.
Ken, exactly on that point also, though, you could be in a situation, especially with a teacher, where you're making the decision whether or not you want to retire. And if they decide to retire because of the August fiscal year and everything, they could have just deferred for a couple months that decision. And that could mean whether or not $35,000 must be included in the offer that may render it not doable.
Well, 70% of.
Okay, whatever the number is.
Right, and he's getting that because we had said Kelly had a 403b with $35,000 that she
right,
couldn't touch.
but if she came in and was going to retire and she came and if she didn't see you and she retired and she came in a week later, it's a huge problem.
Because then she could roll it over and then she'd have to pay it out. You're right. It's good. So there's a planning point to go. All right. So for our numbers on the 401k, Kelly's got $35,000. It's not going to be counted because she can't take the money. David's got $10,000. $7,000 of his 10 is going to be counted as an asset. Now we're going to go on to cash in the bank. The rule there is the first $1,000 doesn't count. Well, so happens that Dave and Kelly have $950 in the bank, so that's not going to count. The next issue.
Well, actually, there's also a little, cash in the bank is a little bit more complicated. There are ways to exempt out a little bit more.
Oh, you tell us about it at the break.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
Are you struggling to pay your mortgage? Afraid of foreclosure and the financial mess it can cause? Time is not on your side. Call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist. For years, Alan has been helping distressed homeowners navigate through the short sale process. His experience will get you out of your home without the credit score damage that follows foreclosure. If you want a fresh start, you need to call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist, 248-854-3829. or MetroDetroitShortSale.com.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Welcome back. All right, we're going through offer and compromise. There's two-step process we have to go through. Right now, we're determining what assets there are that have to be included as a monetary amount in the offer, and then we have to go and evaluate income versus expense. On cash, the general rule is your first $1,000 you get to keep. You also can sometimes increase that, Jenny was telling me at the break, if it's for necessary expenses. But in our example, all they have is $950. It's excluded. We don't have to count that as an asset. Principal residence. The rule there is you take the fair market value of the home, discount it by 20% for a forced quick sale value, and then after that, you subtract the mortgage amount. If you have equity beyond that, it's going to be included in an asset. If you don't have equity, then it's excluded. So, what do we have? Fair market value for their house is how much, Jenny?
$400,000, and they owe $380. So if we look at the quick sale value, multiply the $400 by 80%, the IRS is going to look at it like a quick sale value of $320,000.
Okay, because 400 times 80% is $320,000. They owe $380 on the house. Therefore, they're negative $60,000. In that analysis, zip, we don't have to include any of the house value as an asset. This is a good thing. This is good.
This is like the movie Dave.
That's right. I love that movie.
Okay,
Dave.
Vehicles.
Saturn. They have a Saturn vehicle of $8,000. They make a payment of $5.25. The loan balance is $17,000. So it's worth less than they owe. No value. They have a Toyota 4Runner. Market value $18,000. Loan balance $16,000. So there's $2,000 of equity. Do they have to include it, Jenny?
No, they don't. You can exempt out $3,450 per vehicle if you're married filing joint.
So
How
there's
did
no,
they
there's
come
no
up with-
for sale value 80% when it comes to vehicles.
They're giving you the $3,450.
And did you research and can you tell me exactly how they came up with $3,450? Why isn't it $3,460?
I can't tell you that. I'm sure a lot went into it, but they're not making that public knowledge.
Does it adjust every year?
You know what? This is the first year they've done that.
Actually,
don't
it went up.
As of
It went up
2012.
$200 because of the potholes.
I think that's a good. They should have a pothole factor.
Jenny,
I
what
wanna
about
summarize the
leases?
assets.
What about car leases?
The car lease, the one thing that you want to make sure is that if you're doing the lump sum offer, you want to make sure that your car payment goes through the full 12 months so you can take the maximum car payment.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to summarize the assets. Actually, and if you're watching a TV show, we're putting it up on a chart. What's cool about this is they actually have $67,950 worth of assets. Cash of $950, Kelly's 401k of $35,000, Dave's 401k of $10,000, equity in the house $20,000. The value of that Toyota is $2,000. The amount that they have to include in the offer, however, is only $7,000, the 70% of Dave's 401k. Everything else was excluded. The point here is you don't have to have zero assets. You can have assets, but if it fits within the parameters, they're excluded. You only have to include the amount. So $7,000 is our starting point on the amount of the offer so far, and we haven't evaluated income or expense.
I was going to say,
Jenny?
but we've got a couple that makes $125,000. That's a boatload of money. Aren't they going to have to pay back the IRS just a tremendous amount of money no matter what?
You're going to have to wait and see, Brian.
You're like, you must have been watching CNN to come up with such a way of baiting the audience to what's coming in the weeks and hours ahead.
No, it's
I love
Matlock.
that. Matlock.
Okay, let's get going,
I don't know.
Tonto.
What's Matlock? Okay, now, step number 2, you have to determine the reasonable collection potential. That's the next thing. If it's on a lump sum, you're going to take monthly net income less allowed expenses times 12
to come up with your lump sum amount, which then gets added to that $7,000. If it's a periodic payment, you have to take your monthly net income less allowed expenses times 24. So now we have to go through the expenses. All right, and what I'm going to put up a chart. Imagine there's a chart, if you're listening on the show, of what the actual expense is versus what the allowed expense is. The allowed expense is what is permitted under the national standards.
The
right,
IRS sets forth standards. They're called the national standards, and they're different for housing and utilities and gas and insurance for vehicles based on where you live. So the first thing that they do is they set a standard for food and clothing.
Okay, well, hang on. I want to walk you through it instead. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to give you the item. I'm going to say what my actual expense is, and you tell me what's allowed, whether based upon the national standard. We'll just take them one at a time. All right, their food and clothing expense is $1,482 per month. Is that allowed or not?
For simplicity purposes, I made their actual expense equal to their allowable expense. If you look at a family of 4, the allowable expense for food and clothing is $1,482.
Right, so if I told you their food and clothing expense was $2,500, you would have said you only get $1,482.
Correct.
Okay, so everyone understands that. Housing and utilities, their actual expense is $2,750. What do they get?
For a family of 4 in Oakland County, it's limited to $2,344.
And it's important to note, it's county by county. Every county has different numbers, which is why some of our planning...
Do you get more in Oakland County than
yes,
you
do.
County?
Some of our planning actually includes having people move.
Correct.
Okay, car payment number 1. $525 is their car payment. How much are they allowed?
The maximum per car is $517.
So they get $517. Car payment number 2, $495. How much are they allowed? $517?
No, $495. You don't get to make up the difference.
No, not very nice. Gas and insurance, $650. What are they allowed?
For the Detroit area, it's only $295 a month.
On one car.
On one car.
So does it matter if the kids are 17 or 16 years old? Because those expenses are huge for insurance.
It doesn't matter if you live in New Baltimore and you work in Bingham Farms and you've got to drive 50 miles a day.
Correct.
I'm talking about the insurance costs.
Correct, and they are also definitely not going to look at insurance costs for your children's cars.
All right, car number 2. I'm paying $495 a month. Gas and insurance.
This one, because this vehicle is over 75,000 miles on it, the IRS is allowing an additional $200, so they're going to get the $495.
So you get a benefit of driving an old car is what it comes down to because they break down. That
Correct.
would be the assumption. Federal student loan, $415.
That is the minimum payment, and it's being allowed now. This is a change that was made in 2012.
If my federal loan student payment was $1,200, would that be allowed?
It would, as long as you're actually paying that, and that's the minimum amount.
Health insurance, $515.
Your health insurance is going to be allowed as what it is.
Okay, so if it was $2,200 a month, it would be allowed.
That's correct.
So as a planning factor, in order to possibly reduce the offer amount, I could get better health insurance.
That's correct.
That's correct. Out-of-pocket medical expenses, $240.
$60 a person is the national standard, so that equals $240 for the 4 people.
So if it was $400, you would have reduced me to $240.
No, you can also use the actual amount.
All right, credit card payments, $600 a month.
Zero.
How much do I get? That's a bad one. All right, so that's the end of our expenses. What you're going to find out when we come after the break, we'll summarize the totals, and then we'll figure it out.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances in contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
All right, let me go over announcements, and then we'll summarize where we're at with the offer and compromise. We've got the show shifting to Law and Reality. That's going to be the latter part of July. Bigger, different format, broader range of topics, not just financial crisis, legal issues in the context of reality, which will also bring in political issues as well. We have a free report called Reg X, The Hidden Secrets. It's about how to fight foreclosure. The only law out there now to stop foreclosure and to gain a loan modification is really Reg X. You apply for a HAMP modification, but you use Reg X to get there. The free report can be obtained by go to regxhomesaver.com. The Financial Crisis Analyzer is on our Financial Crisis Talk Show website. It's free. You input your data. It will crunch the numbers and give you available options. Bankruptcy, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, debt resolution, outside of bankruptcy, short sell your home. Are you eligible for a loan modification? It's free. All your information is protected. I want to thank our sponsors, Gold Star Law, Samasco Law, Elite REO Services, Alan Stalter, Short Sale Specialist, Trips Auto Shop and Collision Center in Jackson and Lansing, U.S. Staffing in Jackson and Lansing. We have 2 seminars coming up. Wednesday, July 16th, Protecting Your Life's Work. It's a repeat of the seminars we did in May. Focuses on elder law, Medicaid planning, keeping your assets if you or your parents are headed into the nursing home. Very popular seminar. We brought it back because we were overbooked on both of the seminars.
You're saying backed by popular demand?
Backed by popular demand. July 23rd, Wednesday, Your Future Without Debt, focusing on how to preserve your future income for savings. Key is debt elimination is a key process and part of saving money. That's from 7 to 8:30 at our offices in Bingham Farms. You sign up for that at thavgross.com or financialcrisistalkcenter.com. You can also sign up for both seminars just by calling 888-235-HELP. All right, now let's go back to David and Kelly and their offer and compromise. When we left off at the break, we had gone through their expenses, and here's how it comes out. Their actual expenses are $8,167. They're only allowed to use of that amount $6,798 because in our example they can't use the credit card payments and they face a reduction on one of the car payments and on gas and insurance allowance.
Yep.
And they also had a reduction on their housing and utility expense. So the next step is you go back to their net monthly income, which we told you at the beginning was $7,825. Subtract that from $6,798. That leaves a net of $1,027. On a lump sum, you multiply that times 12. That's $12,324. On a periodic plan, if you're going to go for the 24-month payment plan, that 24 times 1,027 is $24,648. So here's your offer amount. You go back to your assets, which were $7,000. On the lump sum, you add $12,324. That means the offer in compromise on the lump sum has to be $19,324. If it is, Jenny, would it get accepted?
Yes, it would.
Okay. If it's 25, if it's $4,000 would be accepted.
No, you would not.
Okay. On the periodic offer, you have to offer $7,000 plus $24,648, which is $31,648. Here's what's important: they owe $100,000. This is the real deal. On these facts, David and Kelly can get out from under that debt if they can put their hands on $19,324, and they'll have how many months to pay that?
5 months from acceptance, and usually
20% down to begin with, right?
Correct.
And then 5 months from acceptance. If they can borrow the money, find the money, they can be out of it. If they go and they call 1-800 and a guy on the phone says, "Hey, we can help you. We are the greatest in the world at getting a loan offer and compromise approved. Based upon your income, I think we can get this done for $5,000." What would you say the person on the phone was committing?
Malpractice.
Fraud. They are lying. What they're doing is they're lying to David and Kelly because they want to get $7,500 from them on a credit card so that they think they're going to get out of their $100,000 tax liability for $5,000. If they were honest, they would say to him, "We can get you out of this after we crunch the numbers. It's going to cost you about $20,000. It's still a good deal, and then it should only cost about how much?"
I would say, are you talking about their fees?
Yeah.
It would not probably between.
What would David and Kelly pay if they were to you to get this done? About?
Probably about $2,000.
Okay. So if you're calling up and you got a $100,000 tax liability and you want an offer in compromise, and you're calling 1-800, I'm going to save your, you know what, and they want $7,500 for it, and they're telling you you're going to get out of the deal for $5,000. Two things to learn before that we say goodbye for the day. One is you're paying too much money, and number two is it ain't going to happen for $5,000. It's going to be more like $20,000. You got to deal with reality. If you want the pipe dream, it's not there, and you're diluting your own future.
However, Ken, if I said to you, on your $100,000 of tax, you can get out for 20 cents on the dollar if you can get the cash now, or 30 cents on the dollar over 2 years, and it's going to cost you $2,000. Most people, if not all people, would take that deal in a second.
Take it in a heartbeat. It's a great deal for David and Kelly. It might not. Now, we could flip back to Brian and say, if David and Kelly's taxes were more than 3 years old, and if they could otherwise fit within the parameters of a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which would be an interesting analysis on these numbers, but we don't have time, and they could discharge the taxes. If you could discharge the taxes for the cost of a Chapter 7 bankruptcy rather than paying $20,000 or $30,000.
How much would that be?
Well, that would run anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 to get rid of all that tax debt.
The point is, you need to analyze both options. You need to look at it and say, what's the cheapest way of getting out of debt? And because you spend the least amount of money to get out of debt, you preserve the most amount of money for you in your future. That's the bottom line to financial crisis management. Jenny, thanks for walking us through the offer and compromise. Brian, David, always fun. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening and watching.